Mic check 1 2. It's the Y2K collector here. I'm getting ready to go and do a trade that I'll share more information on later on. But I've got a question for those of you out there who have been following this trending topic regarding GameStop and their new promotion where they're buying broken consoles. Why would a video game company that is closing stores and downsizing their physical footprint, decide to not only go out of their way to buy more physical items, but buy broken physical items? Why would a company do that? And I think that's a question that a lot of folks who have been watching this really kind of need to ask themselves, especially those of you who are collectors of physical media, those of you who collect physical video games, because on the surface, I know it looks like a reseller's dream. I know it's like reseller heaven when you can take a bunch of broken items and get pretty much top dollar for them from a company like GameStop. It seems like, almost too good to be true. But there's got to be a reason, a very valid reason, why a video game store or video game company like GameStop would, out of the blue, decide, you know what, we're just going to go ahead and start buying broken video game consoles. And I have one of a few theories as to why they're doing this, but you guys can let me know what you think in the comments below. And this is my theory. I think that GameStop is starting to see things regarding the retro game market that we do not see. No mom and pop shop is going to be able to compete with the data, the sales data that GameStop has because of how large the company is. They've got stores in almost every state in the country. They're selling probably just as much, if not more, retro video games than any mom and pop shop that you could think of. And they have a much broader view with their ability to see what retro game consoles are being bought, sold, traded in. They're able to see which games are selling faster. They're able to take all of this information in. And you got to remember, with the advent of AI, they're able to take all of this sales data, put it into some type of AI analysis system, and really use the information that they have at their fingertips to project, where the market is, where it's going, and see how to strategize to make the most of what's left of the retro video game market. And there's something about retro video games that we all know, but I think sometimes we seem to forget, is that this product is extremely finite. They are not making more retro gaming consoles. And, it's gotten to a point where when you're out there hunting, if you're someone who's gone out there hunting for retro video games, especially if you're looking for like the 6th gen and older, it's getting harder and harder to find consoles. And so if GameStop decides that, not only are we going to buy the game consoles that work, but we're going to buy the game consoles that are broken, they understand that inventory is the name of the game. And they're pretty much sucking up all of the inventory that's left, because every would-be reseller is probably going to every yard sale, every Goodwill, every store, and they're buying up consoles that they would have passed on because they know that they can take it to GameStop and flip it. And all this is doing is funneling the last of the remaining retro inventory right into the hands of GameStop. And what happens whenever something like this happens, where all of the inventory is concentrated into one place? Now GameStop can officially set the market. And I've seen where they've already started to increase the prices for retro game consoles, even in the last year. I mean, a year ago, a PS Vita on GameStop's website would have been $185. Now a PS Vita is $215. An original Game Boy might have been $79. Now an original Game Boy is $120. And they're really going to be able to do this because all of the inventory is being funneled into their pockets. And I could see GameStop trying to position themselves online when it comes to selling retro video games. I could see them trying to position themselves the same way DK Oldies has positioned themselves online. DK Oldies does not have, at least not to my knowledge, they do not have any type of physical footprint or physical brick and mortar store where they're able to sell retro games. Everything that they do is online. And as much as we in the retro game community like to make fun of DK Oldies, talk smack about DK Oldies, talk about how they overprice all of their games and they're fleecing customers and, you know, they're labeling games as refurbished that clearly are not refurbished, because when you open them up, you find dust and roaches and all kinds of stuff in there. Even though this is something that we know in the retro game community, the general public either does not know or does not care, because guess what? DK Oldies is still in business. They're still making money, and they're still making enough money to have a full staff of people who are running their business. They're still profitable. They're still in business. They haven't gone anywhere. No amount of YouTube videos that expose, quote unquote, expose DK Oldies has put them out of business yet. They're still in business and people are still buying games. And that's because people who sell on Amazon, DK Oldies, and even GameStop is starting to realize that the general consumer, the regular average person who's going to buy a retro game, does not have the knowledge that a video game collector or a video game reseller has. The average consumer cannot tell a real from a fake Pokemon Fire Red. They cannot look at a Game Boy Advance SP and tell if the cartridge or if the shell has been swapped, if it's a case swap. They can't tell that a Game Boy Advance SP is a Japanese version versus an American version. They can't look at a Super Nintendo label and see that it's a reprint and that it's been relabeled. They can't look at they don't even know what tools to buy to be able to open up a cartridge and tell if the motherboard is real or if it's fake. And this is something that I think a lot of people in the collector community and even in the reseller community don't realize. They don't, or maybe they do. I think the resellers who might sell on Amazon, they might realize that to an extent, but most people don't realize that. And there's a reason why GameStop is buying broken consoles, because in my opinion, they could be getting ready to adopt the DK Oldies model when it comes to selling retro video games. They have the resources to get a staff just as large, if not larger, than the staff at DK Oldies, with seasoned video game, retro game collectors, retro game players, retro game enthusiasts. They have enough resources to staff an online branch where they bring people in who actually know what the hell they're doing with retro video games, to test video games, ensure that they're authentic, ensure that they work, and even repair these consoles. And they might go full bore with their retro online, with their retro division. And I wouldn't be shocked if they eventually moved all things retro online and followed a DK Oldies model. Now, I think that for the time being, they are still going to have retro video games in select stores. But, I remember when you could go to any GameStop and find retro video games. Now they're trying to concentrate them into select stores. And I think they're going to continue to concentrate the retro video games into fewer and fewer in stores until eventually they say, you know what, we're only selling retro video games online. If you want them, go buy them online. And they would have fully adopted the DK Oldies model, which would suck for DK Oldies, because now DK Oldies would have, a new competitor in the online retro game selling race. And I think that GameStop would do well because, again, to the average consumer, to the general consumer, I'm not talking about the video game collector. I'm not talking about the reseller. I'm talking about the regular Joe Schmo who can't tell the difference between an NES cart and a SNES cart. That person is going to trust GameStop because of how big of a company they are. And when they think, I want to buy retro games, regardless of how much more expensive it is on GameStop's website or DK Oldies' website versus going on Facebook Marketplace, they're going to trust the company, and they're going to, like the idea that they don't have to go jump through all the hoops, and they're just going to buy their stuff there. To me, that is the only reason why I could see GameStop overpaying for broken Nintendo Wiis and broken N64s and PlayStation 2s, and that's the only reason why. They have to have a bigger plan for their retro division, and I think that they see that there's probably a lot more profit in this product or in these products that are very finite And the more they control inventory and the more they control the lion's share of the market, the more they have the ability to set prices. Because right now, GameStop does a lot of their pricing based off of eBay. Because for a while, they were a lot cheaper than eBay. So that's why a lot of people bought their stuff. Then they started getting hip to the game. Maybe they started following price charting. I don't know. The prices started to match eBay, and now the prices are exceeding eBay. Especially with a lot of these consoles, not so much all of their games yet. I'm starting to see where certain games are definitely overpriced when compared to eBay. They still have some games that are, underpriced. You can find them here and there, but they're gonna do an overhaul of their retro game, I think, division. I think that's what they're gearing up to do. And when you go on their website even today to try and buy retro games, you don't see as many of those niche titles anymore. It's a lot of the common 7th gen stuff, a lot of the common 6th gen stuff. They're pulling a lot of that really niche stuff off the website, and I tend to see that happen. And I know it's not because all these games just magically sold out overnight. I know that they've got stockpiles of really good stuff. I think they're trying to strategize how to maximize every single dollar out of the retro gaming market, or what's left of it. And I think the people who are enjoying the fact that they're able to get a good amount of money for basically junk, it feels good now, but 2 to 3 years from now, when GameStop pretty much has the last of the remaining retro inventory that's out there, or the lion's share of it, and they're the ones setting the prices, it's not going to be as fun then. Because then, not only will you be subject to DK Oldies and GameStop, but now you won't even have the luck of being able to find something that's broken, because people took all the broken consoles to GameStop. So I love GameStop. I buy a lot of retro from GameStop, so I'm not mad at the fact that GameStop is expanding and doing what they're doing with retro video games. I just hope that all of this buying of retro inventory does not translate into crazy prices 2 to 3 years from now, and that is my fear. You guys let me know what you think. I'll catch you in the next one. It's the Y2K Collector. You guys take it easy.